Who knows what this is? Raise your hand. All right, keep them up if you've tried it yourself personally. Keep them up if you're using it in your company today to train your workforce. A lot less. So we're here to talk about emerging technology, frontier technology. It is very new. As David mentioned, I'm Rachel from Pixvana, local company right here in TinyPulse's backyard, and we're also TinyPulse users. Not here to pitch Pixvana, but if you want to hear about Pixvana, we do have a little booth out there, and we'd love to get anybody and everybody who didn't raise their hand when they hadn't tried it into a headset. That's kind of my personal thing. I always have one in my purse, and I just get eventually everyone in the world will have been put into a headset by Rachel from Pixvana. So, but what I am here to talk about is XR and HR and what those applications might be, really getting into like real examples of what your peers are doing to kind of test out this technology. So, because it is so new, sorry, I don't know what my forward button is. Did I do it? I'm going to start with some definitions. So, as you said, there's lots of buzzwords. AI, blockchain, we're always bombarded with, what the next big thing is. As it relates to XR, what we mean is extended reality. So, we're in reality right now. Extended reality is just adding things to that. And so eventually we'll be like Minority Report and all the data will just be all around us. But for now, this is kind of the continuum that we think about, which is augmentation to virtualization, meaning augmented is layering on information, but you're still seeing the real world. So Pokemon Go was the first thing that came out that really got everybody to understand what AR is, or Snapchat filters, those kinds of things. And then VR is really taking you to another place. So you see the guy with the headset on. That's what people typically think about VR. But we're showing you a tablet here as well, because you can take that same asset and use it on a tablet, use it on a phone, but you're being transported somewhere else. So some people say augmented is here and virtual is there. So you're going somewhere else, or you're here in the real world. So that's really the landscape. And we, as David mentioned, we're really focused on VR at the moment, but our platform is focused on the whole XR continuum. And our potential is to realize our mission is to realize the potential of XR storytelling. So it's really awesome to come right after someone who's talking about storytelling, because that's really our passion as well. And the reason VR is kind of the thing that we talk about most right now along that continuum is because it's good market timing. There's a lot of things happening, kind of conspiring together to make this something that you can test and pilot, and you don't need to go into some innovation lab and spend millions of dollars to figure it out. You can very quickly, easily, cheaply test this kind of stuff. So cameras got a lot better over the last couple years. Headsets, this Oculus Go right here is $200. A year ago, before that came out, you'd be spending at least $1,000, and you'd be putting a phone in a piece of plastic and be a big pain. So headsets are there, cameras are there, and software is there to make deploying these experiences much easier, and it's a great time to pilot. The other reason to think about it is with VR, there's actually a lot of people using it for training purposes and other HR functions. And the data is already out that shows you can reduce training time significantly, improve performance. So lots of studies in kind of the academic world, and then now moving into the real world and getting great results. And Walmart is an excellent example that's done a ton of VR training, and really, I think they now have 3 headsets in every Walmart. So about 17,000 out there where they're using VR to train their frontline workforce. And the third reason is just the business climate is kind of demanding new ways to train people. I think a lot of people are familiar with this curve. Technology changes quickly, but the humans don't as much. We're wired to resist change. And you can launch as many big transformational plans for your company as you want. But if the humans on the front line aren't adapting to that and haven't really taken that on and brought it home, then you're not going to really have a successful change strategy. So how do you get people up to speed quicker? It's really kind of being demanded by the business today. And another reason we think about VR is that we feel like it has special powers, superpowers. And I really think about these three: presence, empathy, and immersion. Presence, so when you put this headset on and you go somewhere, you're on the top of a mountain or wherever you may be, your brain is actually cataloging that experience as a personal memory. So as I did that, an episodic memory, I think technically is what it's called. So different from you guys seeing this on the screen, you're going to see it, you may remember it, or it may just go into your short-term memory and then not actually even make it into your long-term memory. But when you're in VR, your brain is telling you, I'm there. So then you get this thing, we call it VR vu, but basically a deja vu. If you go somewhere in VR and then go there in real life, you're like, I've definitely been here before. And that activates lots of learning parts of your brain because we're wired that way. Because when, in the caveman days, if you were somewhere new, you needed to be hyper aware because there may be lions and tigers and bears or whatever might be there. So your brain is in this learning mode and this taking all these things in mode. Empathy, a lot of people call VR headsets an empathy machine. And it really is really aligned to the word presence. It's really about presence, but with humans. So when you're in VR and someone's speaking to you, it's pre-recorded, but you feel like they're speaking to you. It really gets you right here. And when people talk about VR and their experience, they point here. They don't, sorry, I'm probably hitting my mic. They don't say, oh, I saw that. They say, I felt that. So it's a way to get you right in front of people and have empathy for people. And then finally, immersion. Of course, when you have a headset on, you're not also checking your email or anything like that because it's impossible. And you're also 360, it's all around you, and you're moving your body, which again lights up more kind of learning parts of your brain. So that's a lot of times why in training it's like, okay, everybody, let's get up and let's, do some experiential things, is because that opens up your brain more than just sitting passively listening, as we often have to do. So all these things conspire together to create these new memories in your brain. And it's a memory of something I did instead of a memory of something I saw. So how are people using it in the real world? We've kind of tried to hone in on top applications, top use cases. And as David mentioned, I'm a marketer by trade. In marketing, there's the 4 Ps, so we had to come with our own 4 Ps for training scenarios. And that really falls into this like people, process, places, and product. So people, just quick description, and then I'll get into some examples, because I think that's what most people want to see. My slide just went dark. So did I do something? Anyway, so people, that's again that empathy and that presence. So a lot of the use cases, oh, can we back up? Sorry, you guys. So a lot of people are using this medium for kind of creating emotional readiness. These just previously discussions about bias and those kinds of things. How do you give people a safe environment to go through some scenarios and experience it for real, but really in a safe environment. Process is about task familiarity, just getting like kind of a readiness for your job. Places is really that presence thing that we were talking about, but giving people mastery of a space. And then finally, products is about corporate storytelling, really, and how do you kind of bring a real personal, immersive story to your employees. So I'll dig into some examples on each one of these to kind of give you guys a better feel. So people. Again, diversity and inclusion just came up, and there was a lot of questions about it as well. It's really, obviously, a very hot topic these days. And this is an example of a technology company that used VR to put people, their learners, into a scenario where they have a seat at the table at an interview, and they see this conversation going on, and they're having to identify those. Maybe it's considered a microaggression. Sometimes it's more overt. They're saying things they're not supposed to say. And I think that was one of the questions, like, how do you identify those little things? Because obviously if someone's overtly racist, you can be very brave and say, stop that. But if it's these little microaggressions, subtle kinds of things, how do you identify it? So this company is using VR to put people through scenes to say, there it is. I see it there. Okay, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to say, ouch? Or are you going to say, wait, I'm really sorry? Are you going to save it for later? What are you going to do? And it gives you options to go down basically a branching narrative of how you're going to deal with that. So guess what? Then when you're in real life and you see that, you're like, oh, it does happen all the time. Women are always interrupted in meetings. I didn't realize that until I was, exposed to it in VR, and now I can see it in real life, and I can say, ouch, or hey, let's let Rachel finish her sentence, or whatever it may be. So this is really kind of giving people a seat at the table, literally, and be able to kind of see what's happening. And I don't know if you saw, there were certain points where the protagonist kind of turn to camera, and the action stops, and it's like, this is how this was making me feel. And again, it's called unconscious bias for a reason. It's not conscious. You're not trying to do it. So even for the person who, was the perpetrator, it's like, I was just trying to create rapport. It's, so everybody has their own internal story, and everybody can be a good ally. And this program kind of uses VR to help people practice that stuff, because a lot of times we're stuck with role play at a training. And when you have your direct reports there with you or whatever, you're not going to really authentically role play these kinds of things. It's very difficult. And with role play, someone has to be the victim, someone has to be the bad guy. And with this, everybody gets to be the ally. Everybody gets to be the good guy. So that's one example. A coffee company uses VR here for de-escalation. So this true story, I guess, like, people are now just like shoving their phones in baristas' faces and like, I'm recording you, if like any like remotely offensive thing is happening. And it really, you kind of go into fight or flight mode. So they use this VR to help people kind of have that experience already, make some choices, make sure they're, even though they're going, typically going into panic mode, what is this person saying? And be able to practice that. So again, they did the good choice. Yeah, it's funny. So in that one, it's like, she's in a hurry and she's really pissed off. And all the choices that you can make seem good, but the best choice is give her a gift card because she's got to go. So when you say, let me get my manager, she gets really irate, and then you get real scared. So anyways, it's really kind of creating a muscle memory for that kind of thing. So it happens in real life. It's familiar. Moving on to process, really in a lot of jobs, the way that you learn is job shadowing. And we're looking at VR as maybe the new job shadowing, or the way to make job shadowing a lot shorter time. So imagine, and typically, especially if you have a lot of frontline workers, like I was talking to a guy from Taco Bell, and it's like, it's pretty much like, watch this video and now just job shadow. And corporate says it takes 2 to 3 weeks, and the store people are saying, nope, it takes like 2 to 3 months to get these people up to speed. And so you might be shadowing a guy who's like the best in the world, or a guy who's like hungover and not really wanting to be job shadowed today. So what this allows you to do is, the #1 barista on the planet, everybody gets to job shadow that person first. So then when they get to, everybody gets excited about the foam art. It's like, I didn't even know foam art was an art, but it is. And he's very good at it. That's what I've learned. So imagine that they've been able to shadow this like best guy. And so then when they get out there, their job shadowing time is much shorter. You can do quizzing, you can really kind of have this full experience. You can do that in the back room. You haven't disrupted the flow of work. And then when you get out there, you're ready to go. This is another example of process where, okay, let's learn the safety process. Let's actually experience this factory floor before you're out there. And that way, when you get there, it's just that much quicker because it's, this is really one of the main ways people train is job shadowing. So this is how they shrink wrap at the Shandong Winery, if anybody's interested. The next category we talked about was place, and this is purely a geospatial kind of idea of like, how can I be there without being there? This is Seabourn Cruise Lines, one of our clients. They use VR to train the table numbers on this train the waiters on the table numbers of this very high-end cruise line. If people have been on cruises, you know it's all about the food. And this is a 5 or 6 star cruise, so it's very fancy. There's no actual table numbers on the tables. And the waiters, can take a really long time, actually 2 to 3 months to learn the layout and the table numbers. Challenge is their contracts are 4 months. So it's a constant challenge for the restaurant managers, and the number 1 and 2 complaints on the cruise are, I got sat at the wrong table or the wrong food was brought to me. Yes, these are first world problems, but it's very hard to train in the dining room because what they have to do is find a time no one's eating, which is hardly ever in cruise world, and then the trainers ran around, put table numbers on every table, and then let the trainees come in and orient themselves, and then give them a paper map. And that was the status quo. And so now they can train in VR whenever, wherever, even on land. They don't even have to be on the boat. And they're already seeing double-digit improvement in speed of finding tables, accuracy in finding tables in their in the way that they test. So simple example, but you can see how that could be really helpful. This is a training that we provide for active shooter response. Unfortunately, this is a thing that we're all thinking about. The guy that you just saw on camera is one of the people that many of you might bring in to have a talk to your company about active shooter response readiness. And typically he gets up and he talks, and then he leaves, and he doesn't know if he's really changed anybody or really given them skills, and it's very hard to create practice opportunities here. So that's what the VR does, is he explains his methods, and then you're able to practice in a very safe environment as many times as you want, in multiple scenes, and start to understand what can I do. And it's all about making quick decisions in the moment, and so being able to have some, just like we do fire drills, same kind of idea, but in VR. So that, in the piloting that we have done, we've seen people increase their, self-reported readiness by 30, I think we're at 32 or 34%, just by going through this and getting some comfort. The last category I talked about was product. It's really corporate storytelling, but I had to come up with a P word. So it's product. So you can imagine, people are using kind of 2 main things. This is one that's using it actually about a product, Internet of Things, a very confusing, nebulous thing to describe. This is VMware, and it's like, what's VMware's role in the Internet of Things? It's even more confusing. And so getting the salespeople on the front line to be able to really tell this story in a way that isn't just a list of features in a PowerPoint was difficult. So we saw their PowerPoint and we said, well, why don't we just drop them into the smart factory, drop them into the smart city, and have them see how all those sensors come together, and then how that their product kind of brings the data together. And that is they actually use it for training salespeople. The salespeople actually use it for selling now, and they use it at trade shows and stuff to break through the clutter there, so it can have multiple uses. And the other big way that I think particularly HR is using this kind of product idea is your brand story, your brand pillars, your brand promise, your mission, vision, and values. Of course, Pixvana, we use it. We have a whole thing we did around our mission, vision, and values, so new people can experience that in VR. And I think, we all have our, especially if you guys work at big companies, you have your orientation day. Person gets up with the PowerPoint and people are told what the values are, but it's rare that people then remember them immediately. So what if every single employee could hear the CEO tell them right to their face what the values are and why they're important, and to explore the world of their company in a really personal way, but very scalable as well. I was talking to somebody at breakfast who's like, they said remote first. So pretty much everybody's remote. So how do you have that? How do you create a personal connection? And this is one opportunity. So brief overview hopefully gives you kind of a feel for some of the ways people are using VR. And again, we say XR because it'll spread out into AR, using a tablet to do the same thing. There's lots of ways to make it super scalable. But now is the time to really dip your toe into the water. Start to learn how it fits within your organization. How can you, create that, faster onboarding, better job readiness, better familiarity. It's a good testing time. It's not necessarily like, okay, start where Walmart is now with 17,000 headsets, spending, tons of money. They started with pilots and they worked their way up, and that's really our recommendation as well. Is to kind of start slow, but try it now. And again, we have our mutual experience in the online advertising space, and I remember, I'll date myself, but every year was going to be the year of mobile. And then it's like, we're telling our clients to advertise on mobile, and they're like, this doesn't work, this is stupid. Nobody's going to click on an ad on their mobile phone. That's ridiculous. So we kept pushing it, and then one day the iPhone came out, and then it became ubiquitous, and everybody clicks on ads on their mobile phone. So to me, it's like, that's where this space is. It's getting ready to break through. It's been through the hype. It's been through the trough. It's coming out. The real use cases are happening now, and it's a great time to try. So that, I know maybe there's questions, but that's the show.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. So please go to sli.do Slido, and so we'll have some questions, and one that's moving really quick. I work in a school and see a number of possible applications. My VR budget is 0. Can I create my own VR content inexpensively somehow?
Yes. Yes, you can. I don't really want to plug Pixvana because I'm not supposed to, but head over there. We've actually built a platform that is really to enable just that. When our company started, it was like, oh, the cameras are, like the process to create a very simple VR experience like you saw there would have taken months. But now we can do it in an afternoon. So you need a 360 camera to capture. We can come help you if you're local. And then you basically can put it up into our system, and it's almost like Adobe Creative Suite, but in the cloud and for VR. You can add all those little texts that you saw. It's very actually simple, and that's our goal. We do have a whole production team, but what we really want to do is just empower people to do this immersive training, and have it on the iPads that you have in all your stores, or where, I guess you said education. Yeah. Schools. You can have maybe a small fleet of headsets, but also people can view this stuff on phones, and it's still immersive. It's more immersive than just watching a video or having a video play while you're also checking email, because you have to kind of engage yourself and click through. And so I would say, yes, you can do it inexpensively and go to Pixvana's table and find out more.
Great. And do you create the training, or do we do it with your platform? I guess the content, where does the content come from?
Yes, both of those. Again, our goal is that it's like you have your curriculum, you have the stuff that you're doing, and you want to just kind of take pieces that presence, empathy, immersion make sense, and convert it and kind of VRify it is what we would say. So we have content like the active shooter program that you just saw. We work with our clients to VRify their content, and then they do it themselves. So it's really that whole continuum. So it's kind of all of the above to that question.
Got it. Well, since it's new, there's another question about cost. How you talked about this a little bit, but how affordable are the VR tools, and how do you match the tools and people, like the right ratio of headsets to employees?
Yeah, so that one right there is $200. So for some people that's like, whoa, that's so cheap, and other people it's like, wow, that's too much. I don't have any budget to buy these. So it kind of depends on the tech that you have in place. If you have tablets, you can leverage that. You can you can put little spectacles onto phones and make kind of a poor man's VR experience. So there's kind of a spectrum. And then in terms of number of headsets to employees, it really depends on the setup of your company. But a lot of people just get like basically a Pelican case with like 10, and it goes like Verizon does this. It just goes from store to store to store, and they have like those cases per region. And because they have a armed robbery kind of simulation that they use. And so that it's like they don't need one for every employee. They don't even need one for every store. They can just ship that around and let people go through the training. So there's lots of different ways to do it. If you have regional training centers, mostly people are thinking about fleets of headsets that, on the ship, it's on the ship. If it's, in a regional training center, it just kind of depends on your setup. I think if there was a ratio, it'd maybe be 1 to 100 or something like that. The experiences, one interesting thing I didn't mention is that people have been finding that you can take like 2 to 3 hours of instructor-led training and get it done in like 20 minutes in VR. Because a lot of training is like, oh, let me storytell, let me explain a bunch of things about this situation. Okay, now I'm gonna tell you the training. In VR, you're in the situation, so then you just can get right to the training. And so you don't want to be in VR for 2 hours anyways, but you can actually get a lot done in a short amount of time, also because it's so active and you're actually you're learning by doing.
In that example on the cruise ship, do you also track the person and their performance or gamify it over time so we can see if we want everyone certified or passing that exam? Do you track the person as they're putting on the headsets?
Yeah, so you can connect the data, since again it's in the cloud, to LMS. For them, they keep it off the internet while you're on the ship, because anybody who's been on a cruise knows the internet is ridiculous. So they keep it off the internet, but then when they get to land or to port, they put it back on the internet, and then all the data shows up. So you have your employees, how they did, how much time they spent, where they looked, there's so much data in there that you don't get. Typically with instructor-led or video, it's like, they were there. That's like your big, and they liked it. Those are kind of your big metrics. With this, you can actually say, they chose this path. They actually tested themselves in test mode for 20 minutes, and then they went to the exam, and they, aced it. Or they did 10 minutes, and they went to the exam, and they had to go do it again. So there's lots of data. And it just has to you just have to attach that, attach to Wi-Fi the same way you do with your phone here. You just get, and then all the data goes up.
Got it. And then someone asked about, this is exciting stuff. Do you have experiences or thoughts about how or when haptic virtual touch will fit into this virtual world as well?
Yeah, so that kind of, for us, I guess we're super practical, and we're like, what can people deploy now inexpensively? So that's why you see video, because you can capture video inexpensively versus making a CG, completely computer-generated environment. Those things are here today, and if you have something that is worth the investment of essentially making a video game, which means lots of developers, 6 developers, 6 months, let's say, to make a okay video game, you can use all of those things. So if I'm training someone on how to use a $1 billion piece of equipment, I will spend $1 million to create a great simulation. So that stuff is there, and it can be, so you want to have the haptic gloves, and you want to be able to turn the dials. Or if I'm training someone on how to perform surgery, I'm going to want to not just be like, here, check out this video and click a button. You want it to be very detailed. So it's just an expense question. It's here today. It's just how much do you really want to spend on that? And of course, the cost curves will go down, but when you're creating what's considered 6 degrees of freedom, which means you're kind of moving around a space, and you can have all of that equipment, like if anybody's seen Ready Player One, what he was wearing, it just dries up the cost, but it's all here today.
Awesome. Well, like I said, if you haven't had a chance yet, Pixvana's outside. You can go chat with Rachel, but thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.